when somebody is subjected to torture, it is incumbent on the state that has jurisdiction over this person to take all the necessary measures to remedy that case. And in most circumstances, domestic laws provide for the punishment to perpetrators of torture.
Prompt and effective investigations and documentation of alleged cases of torture by the state and non-state actors or bandits should be carried out, especially the allegations of gross abuses committed by the SARS officers, sexual violence by Military and Civilian Joint Task Force (CJTF) in the course of combating terrorism, the RAN camp bombing, as well as alleged extrajudicial killings of protesters, particularly the NSARS, with public information on disciplinary punishments handed down against the perpetrators.
Nobody has been convicted of the crime of torture in Nigeria. So if you go by that, you would say, okay, maybe there's really no torture in Nigeria. But when you listen to people, especially all of the confessions coming out from the NSAS panel report, you realize that a lot of Nigerians have been victims of torture at one time or the other.
So there have been a few cases of compensation, few cases of officers that have been asked to be investigated. But when you look at the population of Nigeria, over 200 million people, and you compare it to the number of cases that came before the SARS panels, you will see that those that are getting compensation are just a drop in the ocean. Then a lot of the reports have not been publicized, most notably the Lagos panel that everybody was looking forward to.
What we recommended was that some of the key officers who were involved in torturing people, inhuman and degrading treatment should be prosecuted. We also recommended that the way the SARS was operating, that it should be disbanded. But you know, government and its processes, it took time. Government could not start implementing this report until the NSAS protest started in 2020.
Steps should be taken to ensure the safety and security of the population affected by conflicts, especially internally displaced persons, and prevent violations of their human rights, in particular women and children. Judicial officials, lawyers, and law enforcement agents should apply the UN Convention directly and assert the rights established in those provisions before the courts. The necessary obligation of the judiciary to invalidate confession, statements, and other evidence obtained through torture and ill treatment, except as substantive evidence of the actual acts of torture in the process of investigations. What are the likely consequences of not implementing the recommendations of the committee?
You could say that, well, there is really no sanction that is coming to the Nigerian state, so in the real sense, the implication probably is minimal. But what does it say about the image of Nigeria? What does it talk about the reputation of the country? I mean, if other countries are living up to their obligations and you are not living up to your obligation, or you are telling the international community is, of course, that, well, you don't care, or that you are not doing enough.
The whole world is concerned about how you run your government. It is no nation is entire on its own. Every nation is part of a system, just like Nigeria. So the whole world knows now that many things are failing in the things that we are doing in this country.
So the biggest risk of not implementing the recommendations is for people to begin to be law upon themselves. And we're already seeing evidence of this in our country today.
If that implementation is properly done, it will have improved the image of all the security agencies.
Judicial Commission or boards of inquiries are not to replace proper criminal justice process, and any institutional or hierarchical relationship between the body's investigators and the suspected perpetrators of torture are to be eliminated, with the suspect suspended during investigation to disallow reprisals against their alleged victims. The National Human Rights Commission should be strengthened to effectively carry out its mandate in all parts of the country, with adequate human, financial, and institutional resources provided, in line with the principles relating to the status of human rights, Paris Principles.
Given that we have a lot of other competing issues and other, I will not set up a different institution or committee to deal with the issue of torture. where, in terms of, having a committee for the prevention of torture, where there is a National Human Rights Commission. Because it will require funding, adequate funding. It will require a lot of mechanisms. So if we are going to have the committee as it is, then we, as a nation, we have to be prepared to make sure that we follow the provisions in the optional protocol to the UN Convention Against Torture, Cruel, Inhuman and Degrading Treatment that stipulates the procedure for the appointment of members of that committee, that talks about the independence of that committee, that talks about the issue of capacity building for members of the committee, that talks about the funding for that committee.
Any overlapping functions between the Commission and the National Committee Against Torture should be clarified for proper coordination. Prompt reports on the outcome of torture and ill treatment cases, especially the follow-up to the 27,858 complaints received between 2019 and 2020, as well as compensations made, are to be regularly published by the Commission. To continue, get Part 4, brought to you by Prawa with the funding support of IRCT.